Throughout motorcycle history, innovation has always been accompanied by risk. Engineers push the limits of speed, power, and performance, but sometimes the results are machines that test human capability more than they should. Certain motorcycles, while groundbreaking in design or engineering, gained reputations not only for their speed and style, but also for the danger they posed to those who rode them. These weren't simply bikes that demanded respect. They were motorcycles that could turn a simple mistake into a life-altering event. Some were ahead of their time, blending engines that outperformed the technology available to control them. Others were built with glaring design flaws that transformed high performance into instability. And still others became notorious because riders pushed them beyond what the machines or their bodies could safely handle. In this video, we'll examine 15 motorcycles that earned reputations as some of the most dangerous ever sold, exploring how each one gained its place on this infamous list. Number 15. Kawasaki H2 Mach 4, 1971 to 1975. The Kawasaki H2 Mach 4 came roaring into the motorcycle world like a storm that nobody was ready for. With a 748 cubic centimeter two-stroke triple engine, this machine unleashed acceleration that was shocking for its time. Riders twisted the throttle and were immediately rewarded with a front wheel that had no intention of staying on the ground. The term Widowmaker wasn't just a dramatic nickname, it was earned with grim consistency. The frame, although light, lacked the rigidity needed for such brutal speed. Instead of inspiring confidence, it flexed unpredictably, leaving riders to wrestle a bike that seemed determined to wobble through corners. And when it came time to slow down, the underpowered brakes did little to inspire trust, especially if you were already sailing at over 120 miles per hour. The combination was thrilling but unforgiving. Experienced motorcyclists admitted that riding the H2 wasn't about enjoying the journey. It was about survival. You needed lightning-fast reflexes and nerves of steel, or you'd find yourself sliding across the pavement wondering what went wrong. Many did. Despite the danger, the Mach 4 carved its place in history because it perfectly captured the spirit of the 1970s horsepower race. Kawasaki wasn't interested in moderation. They wanted to dominate. And dominate they did, but at a cost. Countless crashes and countless scars became part of the story. The H2 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. It proved that sheer speed could sell, even if safety had to wait for the industry to catch up. To this day, the Mach 4 remains a symbol of what happens when engineering ambition meets the limits of control, a legend feared and respected in equal measure. Number 14. Brose Superior SS100, 1924 to 1940. In the roaring 1920s, the Brose Superior SS100 wasn't just a motorcycle, it was the ultimate status symbol for speed enthusiasts. George Brose's creation promised something no other manufacturer dared guarantee at the time: 100 miles per hour straight from the showroom floor. That number was astonishing, especially when most roads weren't even paved properly. Each SS100 was hand-built, polished to perfection, and fitted with high-performance V-twin engines. Wealthy riders adored its craftsmanship, and its reputation quickly soared. But the thrill of hitting triple-digit speeds in an era when brakes were rudimentary and suspensions primitive came at a price. Riders were often far braver than the roads were safe. The most famous connection comes from T.E. Lawrence, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, He adored his bro superiors and rode them with unmatched passion. Sadly, it was one of these machines that ended his life in 1935 when he crashed on a quiet English road. His death highlighted the peril of pushing such machines in a world that had yet to adapt to their capabilities. Brakes of the SS-100 relied heavily on drum systems that struggled with repeated hard stops. The suspension, though advanced for its day, still buckled under the strain of poor surfaces and high velocity. When combined, it created an environment where one wrong move could be fatal. Yet, despite the risks, the SS-100 is still celebrated as the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles. It represents the birth of high-performance riding and the desire to push boundaries. Its legacy is not just about speed, but also about the hard lessons learned when technology leaps ahead of safety. The SS-100 wasn't merely fast, it was dangerously ahead of its time. Number 13. Meiko 700, 1980s to 2010s. Among motocross legends, few names trigger as much awe and apprehension as the Meiko 700. This wasn't your typical dirt bike. With a feather-light frame barely tipping the scales at 100 kilograms and an engine cranking out over 80 horsepower, it was less a motorcycle and more a wild force waiting to be unleashed. The power delivery was brutally direct. Even the slightest twist of the throttle could transform a casual ride into a white-knuckle sprint. Riders often described it as being ripped forward before they even had time to settle their grip. Arms strained, shoulders burned, and more than a few riders found themselves flying off the back before they even hit second gear. On smooth terrain, the Meiko 700 was already a handful. On rough dirt tracks, the environment it was designed for, it became a true test of survival. The raw power overwhelmed the lightweight chassis, making stability a fleeting luxury. Corners were unpredictable, landings from jumps could be bone-rattling, and throttle control had to be absolute. A moment of hesitation or overconfidence often ended in spectacular wipeouts. This machine was never intended for the masses. It wasn't built to be forgiving or rider-friendly. Instead, it was a weapon for those who genuinely believed they could master it. Many learned the hard way that this bike demanded perfection, and anything less meant being thrown into the dirt. The Meiko 700's reputation is cemented not by sales figures, but by stories. Stories of fearless riders testing their limits, stories of crashes too wild to forget, and stories of a machine so unrelenting it became a legend. Respect and fear walked hand in hand with this motocross monster, and even today, its name echoes with both admiration and caution. Number 12. Suzuki TM400 Cyclone, 1971. The Suzuki TM400 Cyclone was supposed to be Suzuki's ticket to motocross dominance. Instead, it became infamous for its ability to turn confident riders into crash test dummies. On paper, it looked promising, lightweight, fast, and backed by a powerful two-stroke engine. In reality, it was unpredictable to the point of being dangerous. The heart of the problem lay in its power band. One moment, the TM400 sputtered along with little urgency, lulling riders into a sense of control. Then, without warning, the engine exploded into a surge of raw power that felt like being kicked in the back by a mule. The transition was so violent that even professionals struggled to anticipate it. Amateur riders stood no chance. Added to the chaos was a flimsy frame that flexed at the worst possible moments. In corners or over rough terrain, the bike wobbled instead of holding its line. Suspension technology was still in its infancy, and the TM400 often punished riders more than the terrain itself. Professional racers, who usually could adapt to almost anything, quickly dismissed it. Many labeled it unrideable in competitive settings. Meanwhile, injuries piled up among amateurs eager to try Suzuki's newest offering. Hospitals soon became a second home for riders who underestimated the machine. Despite its failures, the TM400 has a place in motocross history. It's remembered not as a champion, but as a cautionary tale of how a machine can look perfect on the drawing board, yet betray riders on the track. Its legacy isn't of glory, but of fear. A reminder that even big manufacturers can miscalculate spectacularly. The TM400 Cyclone may not have delivered championships, but it certainly delivered unforgettable bruises. Number 11. Vincent Black Shadow, 1948 to 1955. The Vincent Black Shadow was the motorcycle that redefined performance after World War II. With its 998 cubic centimeter V-twin engine and a top speed of 125 miles per hour, it was officially the fastest production motorcycle in the world. In the late 1940s, that kind of speed wasn't just impressive, it was nearly unthinkable. But the Black Shadow's brilliance came with a dangerous flaw. The braking system, carried over from slower bikes, simply wasn't ready to stop something moving this fast. Drum brakes that worked fine at 60 miles per hour turned terrifying at double that speed. Stopping distances were long, and fade was a constant risk. Pair that with a frame that flexed under high loads, and riders had their hands full every time they opened the throttle. At the time, its distinctive black finished engine cases and aggressive design drew admiration. Enthusiasts saw it as the ultimate machine, a motorcycle for those who dared to test their limits. Yet many riders discovered limits they didn't intend to find. Crashes and near misses became part of the Black Shadow's lore. Author Hunter S. Thompson later immortalized the bike with his famously grim warning that riding one flat out for long would almost certainly kill you. The reputation stuck, and the bike's mystique only grew. Despite its dangers, the Black Shadow is remembered fondly by collectors and historians. It was groundbreaking in speed, engineering, and sheer presence. But it also proved that technology can leap ahead of safety faster than expected. Riders who wanted the thrill had to accept the risk. The Black Shadow remains a legend not only because it was fast, but because it made riders question just how much speed a human could handle. Number 10. Suzuki TL 1000S, 1997 to 2001. The Suzuki TL 1000S looked like a dream on paper. A liquid-cooled 996 cubic centimeter V-twin, producing 125 horsepower, aggressive styling, and a mission to challenge Ducati's dominance in the superbike category. It had the power, the attitude, and the performance numbers to compete. Unfortunately, it also had one of the most notorious design flaws in modern motorcycle history. Instead of using a conventional rear shock absorber, Suzuki experimented with a rotary rear damper. In theory, this compact unit saved space and weight. In practice, it overheated easily during hard riding. When it lost damping ability, the bike became unstable without warning, especially in fast corners. 1 second you were carving through a bend, the next you were fighting a machine that wanted to throw you into the scenery. The instability quickly earned the TL-1000S the dreaded Widowmaker nickname. Even experienced riders were caught out, and crashes became common enough that Suzuki had to scramble. The company issued steering dampers and modifications, but the damage to its reputation was already cemented. Riders had lost trust in the machine. The tragedy is that beneath the flaw, the TL-1000S was genuinely exciting. It had raw character, strong mid-range power, and a howl that made it addictive to ride. Collectors today even admire its boldness and recognize that, with modern suspension upgrades, it's a far better motorcycle. But during its production years, the TL-1000S became a cautionary tale. It showed that even the best ideas on paper can turn into nightmares on the road if execution falls short. Suzuki aimed to dethrone Ducati, but instead, it built a superbike remembered more for its instability than its victories. Number 9. Suzuki RG 500 Gamma, 1986. The Suzuki RG 500 Gamma was the street rider's closest link to Grand Prix racing glory. This wasn't a motorcycle designed for casual commuting. With its square-4 two-stroke engine, producing around 95 horsepower in a lightweight frame, the Gamma felt more like a race machine than a road bike. And that was the problem. At low revs, the bike seemed tame. Riders rolled on the throttle expecting predictable acceleration, only to find the Gamma holding back. But once the power band engaged, the surge was violent and immediate. The engine screamed, the rear tire fought for traction, and riders often found themselves hanging on for survival. Corners became especially treacherous, as hitting that surge mid-turn frequently resulted in high sides that ended in spectacular crashes. Despite this unpredictability, the RG 500 gained a cult following. For riders who could tame it, the reward was electrifying performance unmatched by most machines of the 1980s. It was agile, shockingly fast, and intoxicating to ride when everything went right. But for those unprepared, it was a trap waiting to spring. The Gamma's racing DNA was obvious. Its design was borrowed directly from Suzuki's World Championship-winning GP bikes. For enthusiasts, this made it irresistible. Owning one was as close as most riders could get to piloting a professional racer on public roads. Today, the RG 500 Gamma is prized by collectors, both for its rarity and its brutal charm. But its reputation remains double-edged. It is celebrated as an engineering marvel, while remembered for punishing anyone careless enough to underestimate it. The Gamma wasn't just a motorcycle, it was Suzuki's uncompromising invitation to experience racing-level chaos in everyday life. Number 8. Yamaha VMAX, 1985 to 2007. The Yamaha VMAX was a motorcycle that redefined the idea of power cruising. With its 1,198 cubic centimeters V4 engine producing 145 horsepower, it had performance figures that eclipsed almost anything in its category. Add Yamaha's unique V-Boost system, which delivered an extra surge of intake flow at higher revs, and you had a bike that could leave tire marks in a straight line like few others. The thrill was undeniable. The VMAX rocketed forward with explosive force, and riders loved the sensation. But once the road demanded more than straight-line speed, its weaknesses showed. The frame wasn't stiff enough to handle the power, and the suspension struggled to keep the bike composed at higher speeds. Cornering became unpredictable, and handling felt like an afterthought compared to the engine's dominance. This mismatch turned the VMAX into both a legend and a liability. Many riders who bought it expecting a muscular cruiser were shocked when the throttle unleashed acceleration more fitting for a superbike. Add in the lack of refinement in braking and stability, and it was clear that Yamaha had created something thrilling but flawed. Yet the VMAX earned a cult following precisely because of this raw, unfiltered personality. It was intimidating, demanding respect every time you rode it. For enthusiasts who craved adrenaline and weren't afraid of its quirks, it was unforgettable. The bike's long production run showed its enduring appeal, but its reputation was never without warning. The VMAX remains a motorcycle celebrated for its brute strength, but also feared for the way it punished overconfidence. It was less about finesse and more about sheer force, a machine that delivered thrills at the price of control. Number 7. Honda CBX 1000, 1978 to 1982. When Honda rolled out the CBX 1000, jaws dropped everywhere. 6 cylinders lined up in one row, producing over 100 horsepower, and a howl that could wake the neighbors 3 streets over. It wasn't just a motorcycle, it was Honda flexing its engineering muscle. The CBX quickly became famous for its sheer spectacle. But beneath the applause, there were problems. That glorious inline-6 was massive, making the bike heavy and wide. Maneuvering it through tight bends was more wrestling match than graceful riding. The frame and suspension struggled to contain the engine's bulk, and stability at high speeds wasn't exactly confidence-inspiring. Riders often described the CBX as thrilling in a straight line, but nerve-wracking once the road started to twist. Maintenance was another headache. Tuning 6 carburetors in perfect harmony required patience and precision. Mechanics loved the challenge, but owners groaned at the cost. The complexity meant small issues could snowball quickly if ignored. Long-distance rides left many riders drained, not from the wind or the speed, but from managing the weight and quirks of this engineering giant. Still, the CBX wasn't about practicality. It was about making a statement. Few motorcycles could match its soundtrack, and fewer still could turn heads in the same way. It remains a legend, not for being the easiest or safest bike, but for its audacity. The CBX 1000 showed the world what was possible when engineers built a bike simply because they could. Its reputation is split, a breathtaking marvel that demanded respect, and a reminder that sometimes brilliance comes wrapped in compromises too big to ignore. Number 6. Turbocharged motorcycles, mid-1980s. The 1980s were an era of experimentation, and few experiments were as ambitious or misguided as turbocharged motorcycles. Kawasaki, Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki all took a shot at cramming turbo systems into production bikes. The concept sounded unbeatable: compact machines with superbike speed and futuristic technology. The reality was much less glamorous. Turbo lag was the biggest enemy. At lower revs, you'd twist the throttle and get almost nothing. Riders could roll along, thinking the bike was tame, only for the turbo to suddenly kick in like an angry giant at high RPM. The power surge was violent and unpredictable and often arrived mid-corner, sending riders sliding or high-siding into disaster. On top of that, the added hardware made the bikes heavy and awkward. The chassis and suspension of the time weren't ready for the sudden bursts of power, leaving handling twitchy and unreliable. Stopping power also lagged behind, making turbo bikes a risky proposition in real-world riding conditions. Manufacturers marketed them as the future, complete with flashy graphics and space-age styling. But riders quickly learned that the bikes were more dangerous curiosity than practical innovation. Sales tanked, and the turbo fad fizzled out by the mid-1980s. Today, those bikes are collector's items, prized more for their rarity than their rideability. They're remembered as bold but flawed attempts at pushing boundaries before the technology was ready. Turbocharged motorcycles promised excitement, but they delivered a different lesson. Sometimes, being ahead of your time just means being a little too reckless. Number 5. Kawasaki Ninja H2R, 2015 to present. The Kawasaki Ninja H2R isn't just a motorcycle. It's a declaration of engineering dominance. With a supercharged 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine, producing up to 326 horsepower with ram air, it's one of the most powerful motorcycles ever created. The sound alone, a metallic shriek of forced induction, tells you this isn't a normal machine. Built exclusively for the track, the H2R is illegal for street use, and for good reason. The acceleration is ferocious. Crack open the throttle, and the front wheel lifts with ease while the rear tire claws for grip. Wheelies become second nature, not a party trick. Even with advanced electronics like traction control, anti-wheelie systems, and aerodynamic winglets, the bike constantly feels like it's trying to outrun reality itself. Stability is a constant battle. At full power, the world blurs, and every small rider input matters. The brakes and electronics are state-of-the-art, but sheer physics make taming this machine a daunting task. Professional racers respect it. Amateurs are warned to keep their distance. Kawasaki didn't build the H2R for practicality. It exists to show what's possible when engineers are allowed to go wild. It is a hyperbike in the truest sense, a machine that demands track conditions and a rider capable of handling its brutal acceleration. Its danger isn't hidden. It's right there in the open. The H2R is breathtaking, terrifying, and unforgettable. It stands as proof that even in the modern age, motorcycles can still scare riders just as much as they thrill them. Number 4. Suzuki Hayabusa, 1999 to present. When the Suzuki Hayabusa arrived in 1999, it didn't just enter the speed wars, it ended them. With a top speed close to 200 miles per hour, it forced manufacturers into an unspoken agreement to cap future models. The Hayabusa became a legend overnight, celebrated for obliterating speed records with its aerodynamic design and monstrous 1,299 cubic centimeter engine. But the very trait that made it famous also made it notorious. Many riders bought the Hayabusa for bragging rights, underestimating the discipline needed to control it. Its stability at high speed was excellent, but skill and judgment were essential. Without them, riders found themselves in situations their reflexes couldn't save. Around the world, the Hayabusa quickly gained a reputation as a magnet for high-speed accidents. The bike itself wasn't unsafe. In fact, its engineering was brilliant. The chassis was stable, the suspension capable, and the brakes effective for its size and speed. The problem was accessibility. Anyone with enough money could buy a Hayabusa, and many did, often before developing the riding skills required. Add aftermarket turbo kits and tuning, and suddenly the Busa was pushing well beyond its already extreme limits. Despite the dangers, the Hayabusa developed a cult following. Riders adored its mix of speed, comfort, and long-distance capability. It was as much a high-speed missile as it was a capable sport tourer. The Hayabusa's story is a lesson in temptation. It offered near unlimited speed, and while some riders managed it with respect, many discovered the hard way that power without caution is a recipe for disaster. The Busa isn't just a motorcycle, it's a test of restraint. Number 3. Ducati Panigale FIV 4, 2018 to present. The Ducati Panigale FIV 4 is a rolling showcase of what modern superbikes can do. Powered by a 1,103 cubic centimeter V4 engine producing over 214 horsepower. It's built with MotoGP-inspired technology and loaded with electronics designed to keep riders alive while chasing speed. On paper, it sounds foolproof. Traction control, wheelie control, cornering ABS, and electronic suspension all step in to manage mistakes. But that's where the danger lies. With a machine this precise and powerful, overconfidence becomes the real enemy. Many riders jump on the Panigale believing the electronics will save them, only to discover that physics still has the final say. The acceleration is blistering, the handling razor-sharp, and the braking phenomenal. But every action demands commitment and skill. Enter a corner too hot, twist the throttle too early, or rely too much on the safety nets, and the Panigale will remind you why superbikes are not toys. On track days, it's common to see riders pushing beyond their ability, often ending in spectacular crashes. Unlike older dangerous bikes that were flawed by design, the Panigale FIV 4's peril comes from being almost too good. Its performance ceiling is so high that only highly skilled riders can truly explore it safely. For others, the temptation to test limits usually ends in trouble. The Panigale is a masterpiece, no doubt, but it's also a modern warning that technology can't replace skill. It delivers unmatched thrills, but with them comes the responsibility to know when to back off. Number 2. Yamaha YZF-R1, 1998 to present. The Yamaha YZF-R1 stormed onto the scene in 1998 and instantly redefined superbikes. Compact, aggressive, and blisteringly fast, it combined raw power with handling so sharp it felt like riding a scalpel. For skilled riders, it was pure exhilaration. For the inexperienced, it was a trap waiting to spring. The R1's 998 cubic centimeter engine delivered acceleration that stunned reviewers, but it was the chassis design that truly set it apart. Short wheelbase, aggressive ergonomics, and instant throttle response made the bike incredibly agile. Every movement translated directly into action, which meant precision, and also punishment for mistakes. In the hands of an expert, the R1 danced through corners and dominated racetracks. But for riders unprepared for its unforgiving nature, it became a nightmare. Countless accidents were tied to overconfidence, with many underestimating how quickly the R1 could get out of control. The aggressive riding position also wore out casual riders, making fatigue another risk factor. Through multiple generations, Yamaha refined the R1 with advanced electronics, traction control, and MotoGP-inspired engineering. Yet even today, its character remains the same: sharp, fast, and demanding. It's a superbike that rewards skill and punishes hesitation. The R1 holds a place in history as one of the most influential motorcycles ever built. But along with that prestige comes a reputation for being dangerously unforgiving when placed in the wrong hands. It is both a legend of performance and a reminder that precision can cut both ways. Number 1. Harley-Davidson V-Rod. 2001 to 2017. When Harley-Davidson unveiled the V-Rod, it shocked traditionalists. Out went the air-cooled V-twin heritage, and in came a liquid-cooled, Porsche-designed engine producing over 115 horsepower. Sleek, muscular, and aggressive, the V-Rod was Harley's attempt to blend American cruiser DNA with modern performance. The result was a bike that looked fantastic and accelerated harder than most Harleys ever dreamed of. On the drag strip, it was a monster, thundering down the quarter-mile with ease. Fans loved its bold styling and brutal straight-line power, but on real roads, the cracks appeared. The low-slung design and limited cornering clearance meant riders couldn't lean confidently. Worse, flaws in the rear suspension made handling unpredictable. Hitting a bump mid-corner could cause the rear tire to lift slightly, robbing traction in an instant. For a heavy cruiser, that kind of instability was dangerous. Despite these issues, the V-Rod carved out a loyal following. Many appreciated its break from tradition, while others criticized it for straying too far from Harley's roots. Its weight, combined with awkward ergonomics, made long rides exhausting. The compromises became clear. It was built for show and speed in a straight line, not for carving mountain passes. The V-Rod remains a polarizing machine, admired for its daring design and performance, but remembered for the hidden dangers that came with it. It was Harley's bold experiment, part muscle bike, part cruiser, that pushed boundaries but left behind a reputation of unpredictability. Throughout motorcycle history, danger has often walked hand in hand with innovation. The bikes we've discussed today weren't just machines. They were milestones, sometimes remembered as much for the risks they posed as for the performance they delivered. From the unpredictable Suzuki TM400 to the sheer brute force of the Kawasaki H2R, these motorcycles remind us that speed and power must always be balanced by control, safety, and respect. Motorcycles will always attract thrill seekers, and that thrill is part of what makes riding so captivating. But history also shows us the consequences when performance outpaces safety. If you found this deep dive into the most dangerous motorcycles ever sold engaging, make sure to like the video, leave a comment about which bike you found most shocking, and subscribe for more detailed looks into the wildest stories in motorcycle history.